Plot hard, graph hard, plot hard, graph hard, plot hard, graph hard, plot, 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 plot. Oh, graphs of sine and cosine functions. You guys never knew that I was such a good friend with Wiz Khalifa to help me start that intro, did you? Anyway, I got all kinds of tricks up my sleeve. What we got here in 4.5 is we're actually going to be graphing some of these functions that you guys love so much, sine and cosine functions. And we're going to do some basic ones. We're going to do little transformations with our, horizontal and vertical translations. We're going to be stretching and flipping and flopping and shrinking and all kinds of stuff here with these graphs. So we are going to use some of our knowledge we've used previously. And the cool thing is, whenever you graph these, you really only have to use 5 points. 5 points, you say. Aha! Not too shabby. What we need to know, though, first is what the actual sine graph looks like. Okay, sine is actually kind of an S-curve. Okay, a sine curve is an S-curve. And so sine, S, starts with S, perfect. If you notice in this picture, we have other sine curves though also. Well, that's because a sine curve and a cosine curve never stop moving. A good example of a sine curve could be like a heart monitor. The heart monitor, unless you start exercising, then the sine curve will change a little bit, but it never stops going on forever until you hear that beep. That's a sine curve you don't want to hear. So anyway, this black portion, this S, starts here at what we call the origin, goes up, goes down through pi. At 3 pi over 2, it's down at -1, and at 2 pi, it's back up here at 0. So if you think about this, you have 5 points. You have 1, you have your beginning point, you have your end point. They're at the same height. Your middle point is here at the same height, and then you have your maximum, and then you also have your minimum. So as we're talking about this one cycle of your sine period, you have three points that are all on this origin, unless there is a shift up or down. We'll get to that later. Don't freak out. You have a maximum, and then you also have a minimum. Now notice in between each of these points, okay, if you plot this first and that second, your first point is at 0 for your sine curve. Your second point is at 2 pi. Well, 0 and 2 pi in that same place. Yes, it is. On your circle. Halfway in between 0 and 2 pi is pi. Oh, hey, there's a little dot. So that'd be the third one you'd want to plot. Well, halfway between 0 and pi is pi over 2. If you remember that here, if you think about at pi, what's your ordered pair? Well, there it is 0, or sorry, I didn't want to do that. Sorry. If you go back to pi over 2, you're here at up 1, and if you go to 3 pi over 2, that's halfway between pi and 2 pi. That is a -1. So if you think about these values, okay, how high and how low you are, you only go between -1 and 1. So if you think about your circle, you're really plotting this point, and you go around your circle back to this point again. There's your first and your second. Here's your third point, here's your fourth, and here's your fifth. And you think about your sine values of each of those. Well, this is 0, 1 comma 0, but your sine is 0. Here at pi over 2, you're at blank comma 1. So at pi over 2, if you go over distance pi over 2, you go up 1. That's your sine value. Here at pi, you're at -1 comma 0. Your sine value is 0. So at pi, you're at 0. At 3 pi over 2, if you think about your ordered pair here, you're at 0, -1. So your sine value at 3 pi over 2, over 3 pi over 2, down 1. There's your dot. And then you just connect those. So that would be one that'd be one period or one cycle of your sine curve. If you wanted to repeat this, and all you do is just Go from 2 pi over 2 over here to 4 pi over 2, or sorry, just 4 pi. Put a dot. Halfway between 2 pi and 4 pi is 3 pi. Put a dot. 5 pi over 2, dot up here. Dot down here between 3 pi and 4 pi. And it just continues on and on and on and on. So, let's look at our cosine curve. Cosine is basically the same, except that it makes kind of a cup shape, if you will, or a chalice, crunk cup, if you're talking about Little John, yeah! And so we have this little cup here, and now these values are a little different. You still have 5 points you have to graph. You have your first one here, but you start at 1. You have your second point, which is at the same height. At 2 pi, you go up 1. And then your third point, well, halfway between your first and your second, there's your third. That's actually down at -1. Halfway between your first and or between 0 and pi is your fourth point, which is at the same height as your fifth point. And so these are your cosine values. So if you think about your circle once again, 0 and 2 pi is your first and your first and your second point. So at 0 and 2 pi, cosine value is 1. Okay, your ordered pair is 1 comma 0, but your cosine is a 1. Halfway between 0 and 2 pi is pi. So at pi, you are at -1, 0. So that should make sense that at pi, when your theta is pi, you go down -1, put a dot. At pi over 2, you are at 0 comma 1. So your cosine is 0. So at pi over 2, you're at 0. And at 3 pi over 2, you're at 0 comma -1. But we're only talking about the cosine value, which is 0. 0. So hopefully you learned some patterns here, and these will definitely help you when you are trying to graph these here in 4 or 5. Keep in mind your domain, that's your values going left and right. That's going to be all real numbers. Your range is only between -1 and 1. In your circle, all right, aren't these only between -1 and 1? Yep. And both of these functions, so how about we say instead of each function, both functions have appeared at 2 pi. That means one full cycle is from 0 to 2 pi. Now, we will get into some stretching where one full cycle is going to be a little bit longer or maybe shorter than 2 pi, but you need to keep this shape in mind, okay? You have 5 points for each of these graphs you have to plot. Not too bad. Look for the patterns. Last thing here is this is in your book, okay? These are all your basic characteristics that you need to know about for each of these. Of your parent functions, your domain for both of them are all real numbers. Your range is the same, -1 to 1. Period is the same, 2 pi. Intercepts, don't worry so much about that. Odd, even, don't worry about that so much. And these others, but keep in mind these 3 things right here are all the same. And you can find your other points to graph. So sine, you start here, the first one. Put your end point, the second point, halfway in between is your third. Fourth one is halfway in between these 2 points, but it's up 1. And then your fifth point is halfway between pi and 2 pi, which would be down 1 here, because you have to have an S shape. Ta-da! That's your introduction to sine and cosine functions. Plot hard, graph hard,